Hello, Encounter. Coming to you. This is not a sermon. This is a special video. Last week, if you've been following us on social media, if you're a part of that, we had an old church meeting where we cast some of the vision of the things that we feel God is calling us into 2021. If you're able to attend that or you're looking to Zoom, that's great. But if you missed it, I wanted to record a video to share with you that information so all of you know what's going on and what are the things that we feel that God is calling us into the future. If you've been following on our sermon series, the sermon series that we've just finished is called Into the Unknown. And the idea of that series is precisely that, like the people of Israel, they're following God into the unknown of the desert, that's kind of like where all of us are right now. And our church is part of that we're going to 2021 and we don't really know everything that's going to happen. And what we're trying to do to the best of our abilities, follow the guidance of God. And as a church leadership, we've been in conversations for several months now, in prayer, seeking God, talking, trying to figure out what is God calling us, trying to discern and listen to the voice of the Holy Spirit about the things that God is calling us into. And, now that we're at a pivotal moment where we're about to go back into in-person services, I want to share that with you. I want to share what it means going back to in-person services, why now, and all that constitutes. And before doing that, I just want to take you back to where we were, 11 months ago. 11 months ago, 12 months ago, in February of 2020, that was probably one of the best months the church had, believe it or not. Like we had our highest record attendance outside of an Easter service. We're seeing new faces every week. And we were excited. We're excited that with the leadership of the church, we were excited about the future. It felt like God was up to something. And we were developing all these new systems to help people, assimilate into the life of the church. We're looking forward to Easter. It was a really great time. And then COVID hit. And things changed drastically fast. And we had to adapt to that. And honestly, I'm proud of some things because, we're a small church and through our partnership with friends like, our friend Desmond McNamara at Magnamedia Productions and our friends at Guest Worship, we were able to do a quick pivot into online ministry. And we've been able to put out, I think it's a good worship service Sunday after Sunday for 11 months. And, we had to figure out, but we managed to move, small groups into Zoom and things like that. And then even when the weather got nicer, we experimented with certain things like doing outdoor groups. And we did like a Taco Tuesday group with men. Like we did quite a lot of things. And some of them work great. And we're thankful to God that we're able to do that. But as the time has gone by, we're realizing more and more that we cannot keep doing that indefinitely for a number of reasons. But the number one for me is that, we're not a big church. And because of that, so much of our sense of community and connection was centered around, our being with one another in our Sunday worship and in our small groups. And while I'm very, very, proud and grateful for what we've been able to do digitally, the reality is that you can only, if that's your primary thing, you can only do it for so long. And more we've seen, people are just weary of being on Zoom calls. When you're on a Zoom call all day long at work, the last thing you want to do is go to a small group also on Zoom. And, at the beginning, we're all connecting and talking on the chat while the service was airing on Sunday mornings. And then kind of like as the months went by, we start sleeping in, or started trying to do something else, and now we connect at different times, and we say, hey, I won't watch the service when it airs, but try to watch it later in the day, and you realize you never get to it, and you think you'll do it later in the week, and you never do, and before you realize, you've been going on for weeks without actually, worshiping God in the context of the Sunday services that we do. And my concern for us as a church is that we have to be proactive in taking steps so that we don't lose completely our sense of community as a church. Technically, we would have been able to go back to meeting in person earlier because our church, our size is under the, size limitation for houses of worship in the city. And, with all the proper precautions, we would have been allowed to meet. We didn't want to do it. Honestly, the primary reason was because we still don't feel like the size of our space is, safe due to COVID for us to meet. If you've been to our space, it's not that big. We're kind of like all cozied up together inside, and that's great. Like when on a Sunday morning, it feels like we're like at a coffee shop, and it's just like a great sense of community. But when we all have to be like spaced out and socially distanced, even like on stage between me and the people doing worship, like we could have only fit like maybe 10 people in this room. So we never felt like we had the right space for that. And then when Christmas time came around, I wanted to do something for Christmas for us together, and we reached out to Park Road Community Church, which is a church that's about a block away from where we normally meet, and asked if we could use their space. And they were very gracious and very hospitable and allowed us to use their space for their lessons and carol service. And it's a space that's much bigger than we normally meet, where we all could fit, properly socially distant. It has, high ceilings for good air circulation. We can open doors to let airflow. It's a much better experience from that standpoint. And that started some conversations with them about, would it be possible for us to rent their space to have worship services there? And after going back and forth for a number of weeks, we finally reached an agreement. And starting this Sunday, February 14th, we're going to be able to go back to in-person worship at Park Road Community Church. And we're really excited about that. Now, the time is going to be a little bit different. We're going to be meeting on Sundays at 5 p.m. So no, we're not going to have a morning worship service like we used to do here. We're going to have an evening service. Now, for some of you, this is not news. We've been talking about this on social media. Most of you received a poll that you went through and answered some questions. And we asked you, do you prefer a morning service or an evening service? If we do an evening service, are you open to it? And, it was kind of like everybody that answered, when we asked a question, it was like 50-50 between morning or evening, but everybody said that if we only did an evening service, that you all would be willing to go back to it. The majority of you answered that you feel like you're ready to going back to in-person service. So those things that you answered informed this decision that we made. The reason why we're having an evening service is because Park Road, right now they're not having morning worship. But as, the vaccine keeps rolling out, their churches, primarily seniors, they feel like now that seniors are allowed to be vaccinated, that they might be able to come back sooner rather than later, but they don't have a timeline. So if we did morning services, we didn't know how long we would be able to meet there. In the evenings, they're not using the space and they don't have anything regularly scheduled there. So we have a little bit more of like permanence using the space. That's why it's a 5 p.m. service. Now, some of you may not feel ready to go back to in-person worship. And we totally get that. And we don't want you to feel excluded, and we don't want you to miss out on the life of the church. So because of that, we're going to continue doing online worship. We're going to continue putting out a digital worship experience. If you notice, it looks a little bit different. It's a little bit shorter. And part of the reason why is because one of the things that we've learned is that online is not the same thing as in person. It cannot function the same way. So we're trying to design an experience that's, easy to watch. We're trying to keep the whole service between like 35 and 40 minutes. That means I'm preaching shorter, which some of you are grateful for. And that's going to continue being there every Sunday at 11 a.m. on Facebook or YouTube. You can watch a service if you can't make the in-person service in the evening. A couple of things that will be different is, we're still going to try to adhere to COVID protocols as far as like we're asking people to sit socially distanced. You cannot sit on every row. Like you have to skip a row to sit, and we're trying to like space people out. We're requiring that you wear a mask at all times while you are inside the building. That's for everybody. Communal. It's not like we're going to all come together and take the same cup and the same bread. It's going to be like individual packets that you pick up at the beginning. We're going to ask you to check in every Sunday when you're there. Just like something happens and we need to do contact tracing, we have that information. That's honestly to try to, keep you safe and informed of everything. So there's going to be some changes. It's going to try to be a shorter service. There's certain things that we can do. We cannot have food at the place. So that part might feel a little bit different. There won't be like coffee or anything like that, at least at the beginning. At the beginning, we're not going to have children's ministry right away. Not only because of, look, the space, but mostly because we are honestly kind of like rebuilding our services, and we're rebuilding our volunteer basis, and we need to see, how many people we have coming in, how many children we have coming in, and try to start recruiting volunteers and inviting people into that. So at the beginning, there won't be children's ministry, but we're going to have things for your children to do when you're at the service. You're going to have, packets of activities, so your children can be entertained while I'm preaching and while we're having our worship time. Now, we did this survey and we tried to gather people's information, see where people were at, and the reality is that even though we did that, we're not entirely sure where everybody is at. We don't know how it's going to be received. It might be that some of you, even though you said on the survey that you were ready to attend, you may not, especially if it's an evening service. So we are going to be doing a trial run. So for the next 4 weeks, starting on February 14th, we're going to have an evening service every week. And that time we're taking as a time of discernment and prayer and seeking God and seeing where everybody's at. And then based on that, we'll make a decision about continuing having weekly in-person services or pivoting to something else. If it feels like, like we're having a good response, that people are coming and attending and engaged, our plan is to stay at Park Road Community Church at least until the end of the school year. And it doesn't mean that we have to move out after that. We have the capacity to continue being there past that date. But that's a timing that then we'll analyze how are things going as far as the vaccination process in the city. And are we able to come back to our space in a way that people feel safe? So that's kind of like the timeline, just to give you an idea. So if we continue having services, we'll be there at least until the end of the school year, which I think is kind of like the middle of the month of June. That's the general gist of what the immediate next step is. And our invitation is, if you feel like you're ready to come back and be a part of that series, that we invite you to be there. And we would love to see you there and be a part of there. Maybe you felt like God's calling you, hey, if we're going to continue doing this, I want to volunteer. Well, let us know and sign up, and let's just start getting back into the life of the church. So that's the number one thing that I wanted to share. Now, I want to take just a few minutes to give you a little bit of like a larger vision of what I think God is calling us to do. I've done a lot of thinking and a lot of praying in these few months about the future of Encounter and what does God want to do with us. And there's so many things that, we've noticed and been trying to take note of, and how do we implement that into the future? And I want to share those things with you today because I think that they're important. So kind of like build our future strategy around these 4 specific things that I want to share. Number one is this. One of the things that we've noticed is that even though we want to go back to in-person ministry, the reality is that, the floodgates of digital content and ministry, that those have opened. In our personal experience, a lot of people that find Encounter, they find us through the internet. They find us in Google searches, and they look up a website and they decide from a website where they want to come and visit us or not. And some of them come check us out. Some of you have become part of Encounter because of that. But up until before COVID, our website just basically had some basic information about the church, how to find us, and we'd love to connect with you. Now that, most churches, including us, we've put all of our content online, the very first thing that somebody does is not only goes to the website, but they want to see the service. They want to see what the preaching is like. They want to see what the worship is like. And now we have the opportunity of having that present for people. So that's one of the reasons why we're not going to stop doing a digital service of some sort every week. So that's going to continue being there. But, besides that, we're taking some steps. We're rebuilding our website in a way that kind of helps people connect with the church better and walk through what it means to be a part of Encounter. And hopefully it's a little bit more engaging and inviting and helps people connect with our church. It also means that we're trying to see what other content, what other ways we can use the digital platform to supplement the in-person platform. One of those things, for example, is a lot of teaching and information. One of my frustrations with how churches do ministry earlier is that most of the information is disseminated in sermons, but our sermons are completely disorganized in a way, right? If you want to learn how to pray, you have to listen to a sermon from January of 2017, and then you have to listen to this other sermon series from 1999, and it's not and organized in a way that if you've never learned how to pray, that can help you walk you through that. Well, we can change that. So we're actually starting working on developing content that helps you, put spiritual practices into your life now. Like, how do I build a quiet time? We put a video a few weeks ago about how do I build a rule of life and things that I can incorporate in my life. So our goal is to do more and more of that anybody that, you can come to our website, go through the information and start putting it into practice in your life, as soon as possible. And I think that's going to make a big difference. The second thing is that I'm more and more convinced, and this is a conviction that I've had for the last couple of years, that the thing that's going to take the church into the future, the thing that God's going to use beyond any strategy, beyond any technology, is God's presence, which is mediated through us and manifested through us through prayer. That the thing that in a world where, truth right now is such an ambiguous term that nobody agrees on, where the church honestly even has a reputation of being so marred by the last few years. That the thing that will really change the hearts of people is not just an intellectual argument, but it's actually the tangible power and presence of God, which manifests through prayer. That what God is calling us to do is to develop a culture of prayer in the church. The next series that we're starting next week for Lent is a series precisely about prayer, about how to seek God. And we want to, use all these other elements to help you. How do you implement a prayer time that's consistent in your life and give you the tools for that? Maybe build some courses. My dream is to build a prayer ministry in the church, that everything that the church does is just fueled and saturated by prayer, and then we see God do things that we haven't even dreamed of seeing already. The next thing is something that you've heard me talk a lot about, and is spiritual practices. That more and more I am convinced that the future of discipleship is not just intellectual information. It's not just learning another data point about God. It's actually spiritual practices. It's actually putting into practice the teachings of Jesus. And that the goal of the church is to equip you not to, come to church on Sundays and volunteer for a ministry. It's actually to incorporate and put rhythms into your daily life where you're seeking God, where you're experiencing the power of God, teaching you to develop a prayer routine, teaching you to develop a routine of reading the scriptures and putting them into practice in your life, teaching you to how to implement fasting and keeping the Sabbath and being generous and all sorts of things into your life. So a big part of how we envision the future of discipleship and Encounter is precisely in helping you implement spiritual practices in your life. The next thing is that we feel like we need to broaden our geographic ministry focus. If you're familiar with Encounter, we're based in Columbia Heights. My wife, May, and I, we've lived in Columbia Heights for over 5 years. We love this neighborhood. This neighborhood has some incredible things, some great people, and also some very difficult challenges. And yet, we feel like this is where God has called us to be and love. And as a church, we've tried to do that. We've tried to be a church that's present in the community. And to be honest with you, the original vision was that Encounter would become almost like a local parish, where people would walk to church and come and connect, and that would be kind of like the main center of gravity of the church. And what we've noticed since the beginning of the church really is that, we had people from Columbia Heights come and connect with Encounter. We have people from other places as well. We have people from all over Northwest DC come to Encounter. We have people from, the suburbs in Northern Virginia come to the church. We have people from the suburbs in Montgomery County come to the church. Some of you, during the months of the pandemic, for one reason or another, you moved. And some of you moved kind of like outside the city into these suburbs, and you're still connected to the church. Which means that if this is the reality for the church, is that we need to then rethink how we do ministry in that way. How do we connect with you and help you then be a presence for Christ wherever you find yourself? So much of the future for us is going to learn to be a church that just expanded beyond or neighborhood boundaries, which also connects with how we do community. We've tried different ways in which doing community in our small groups. We've had, at some point, neighborhood-based small groups. We've done, affinity groups. We've done all sorts of things. And, right now our groups are paused And our hope and our future is that we can begin restarting that in March. So what we're doing is kind of like, we put our groups on pause, and starting in March, if things progress right at Park Road Community Church, it's going to basically turn our whole church right now, because we're small enough that we can do this, into a big community group. That we start having fellowship and connection together. And our hope is that out of that, as our relationships are building outside of just our Sunday worship experience, but just an intentional time of community, start kind of like helping install groups in these different regions and areas. A group in Northern Virginia, a group in Montgomery County, a group in Northwest DC, where people are able to then practice the way of Jesus and connect with their community and with the neighborhood. That's kind of like the general vision and the general things that we feel God calling us into the future for the next few months. Now, you might think, Joel, that's a lot. And yes, it is. And we're not doing it all. Some of these things are going to take weeks. Some of these things are going to take months. Some of these things are going to take years. The first step right now is following Jesus into what we feel He's calling us to, which is going back to in-person worship, and very slowly start adapting all of these things. And things might feel uncertain. For some of you might feel like, I don't know if that's going to work. Listen, I've had all of those feelings myself. All of us in the leadership of the church have had those feelings. But remember what we've been talking about all these past Sundays, right? That it's always been like this for the people of God. That we're not really following only our plans and our visions. When we're at our best, we're trying to follow where God is leading. And as long as we do that, we're going to be safer than if we're just trying to control things and control results and make things work our way. So my challenge for you is twofold, right? One is, if you feel ready to go back to in-person worship, taking all of the proper health precautions, we invite you to that. We would love to see you join us this Sunday, February 14th at Park Road Community Church. We'd love to see you. And let's commit to each other to start rebuilding that worshiping life as a community. But then the next thing is probably the most important. Let's commit to do the things that are in front of us that God is calling us to do. And let's leave the results up to God. Let's trust in God and let's be obedient. And let's take all these next steps. And we're slowly going to start rolling things out and giving you opportunities to get involved in different things. And as those opportunities happen and come about, take them. We need to start rebuilding our volunteer base. Maybe it's time for you that you're thinking about, maybe I want to serve when I go back. Well, listen to that call of the Holy Spirit and take the step of faith. And as we do that, my conviction, my belief is that we're going to start seeing God doing things that He hasn't done before. We're going to start seeing God move in ways which we could have never expected Him to move. That in one moment, God can change things and move and transform and give life. And that's our hope as we follow Jesus. So that's what I wanted to share with you. That this is where we're going in 2021. For once, I really cannot wait. I cannot wait for Sunday, and I cannot wait to see what God does. And I hope that you join us in that journey. Grace and peace.